Aida for freaking out when my wife locked our son out of the house at night after he drank alcohol. I am 39, have a 16-year-old son with my wife, F40. This incident happened a few days ago and she's still mad at me. I was on a work trip so my wife was at home with our son. When I got back, I found out that he had been hanging out with his friends and they convinced him to drink some beer and he got a little drunk. I'm not saying what he did was right, but him and I had a talk about it and it's fine. The problem is that when he came home and my wife found out, she was furious and kicked him out and refused to let him back in until the morning. He was begging her to let him but she wouldn't. When I found out, I was furious. Regardless of what he did, she made a slightly drunk teenager stay outside by himself at night. Something very bad could have happened to him. We had a huge argument over it. I asked her how the hell she thought that was okay. She just kept saying that it's our son's fault for drinking alcohol. My wife isn't really talking to me now and my son isn't talking to his mom. I feel like I'm in the right, but maybe I'm not. Aida?
NTA. No matter if he was a little or very, he's a vulnerable minor and I would not leave him outside. There are a lot of other ways of setting high expectations and disciplining a kid. Child neglect isn't one of them. You two need to talk and get on the same page as far as discipline goes so you have a set of consequences and rules you are both comfortable with.
NTA. He is not the first 16-year-old to show up at home. Giving him a lecture is fine. Locking him outside is not. He is a minor. Safety should still be considered. That is one of your tasks as a parent.
NTA. I get that she's trying to teach your son that actions have consequences, but the much more important lesson to teach here is, when I up I can always go home. Mom and Day might be mad, but I know I will be safe with them and we can talk at him for drinking underage, but that's being grounded or having your driving privileges taken away. This is an important moment in the parent-child relationship. You want to be home base, not the police here. Just to be clear, I am not in any way saying don't punish him. He did something wrong, but coming home at your first time drinking is not the time to be berated and kept outside. It's the time to hear, sleep it off. We'll be discussing this in the morning. Signed, the son of parents who immediately punished and did things like your wife did. So now we have a very superficial relationship. They get next to no news info because I'm still nervous it will somehow be used against me. And I don't seek them out whenever something happens to me.
NTA. Leslie Mahaffey, a victim of serial killers Paul Bernardo and Carla Homolka, was locked out of her house by her parents the night they kidnapped her. They took turns making videos of them and torturing her for days before they killed her. Have your wife research that case and I bet she never locks him out. I got a bunch of awards for this comment. Thank you for that. Although, I have gotten banned every other time I've been on Reddit in the past for arguing with trolls and have no idea WHST to do with them.
Good job. In case he ever does it again, she's made it that he will ride with a friend who may be as he knows he can't call her for a ride. Well done, mother. Talk about.
I came to say this very thing. Also, OP's wife is acting like a child. No rational adult would think it's a good idea to leave a teen outdoors unattended. NTA.
NTA. One of Paul Bernardo's victims was grabbed after she was locked out of the house for breaking curfew. Extreme example, yes, but there are better ways to make a point than locking a teen out of the house.
Your wife denied your child shelter at night while he was intoxicated. She endangered your kid. NTA. And I have to ask your wife the following. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Google, Leslie Mahaffey. Your wife needs to consider if she wants a son or a funeral. NTA.
NTA. Your wife single-handedly taught your son that if something is wrong, he can't trust her to keep him safe. Withholding safety is not a punishment, it's cruel. I really hope your son has seen you stand up for him on this, that you have or will sit down with him and tell him that what he did wasn't okay, but that her reaction was entirely unreasonable and unacceptable. She cannot do this kind of thing in the future. Talk with both of them about what rules he is not allowed to break and what will happen if he does. None of which should be abusive responses intended to scare or embarrass him.
I've never heard of that case before. That's terrible. I wouldn't be able to live if something like that happened to my son. I'm going to try and get my wife to see how incredibly dangerous what she did was.
NTA his mother has just ensured that he will never call her for help for anything if he needs it. And in saying that, I really hope he understands that he can call you because kids do dumb, and he needs to know he has someone who isn't going to hate him for making a mistake.
He knows. When we talked about it, I made sure he knew that he was wrong, but what happened was not warranted. I don't want him to think that he'll be kicked out every time he messes up.
Short of physical violence, there is basically zero legitimate reasons to lock a child outside their home. All if the reason is legitimate. As the child's guardian, you are responsible for their safety, period. That's what being a guardian your wife up massively. This is not something you can let her get away with. She endangered your child while you were not around. To never the Redditor encouraging everyone to break up. But this actually divorce worthy if you can't get her to see sense. She absolutely put your son at risk of danger or injury with her actions, unless your living situation is unique and you have like a huge private backyard with hammocks and cabanas and sleeping outside is normal, or something. Seems unlikely to the whole thing, but for the record, drinking laws in the US are asinine, and people who freak out about underage drinking are typically either extremely obedient to the law, gross, or have intense religious reasons to oppose drinking, also gross emo. There are cultures and countries around the world where 16-year-olds have a beer with their friends without the sky falling. Learning to drink responsibly at a gradual pace seems much healthier to me than zero tolerance until 21. At which point I can down this whole mag of Jack myself. I'm invincible. Time to drive home. I don't even feel it. My 2 cents.
That's really good. It's so important for kids to know that their parents can be trusted even when they mess up. Punishments are supposed to teach accountability. Locking him outside isn't going to do that. I don't imagine that settling this with your wife is going to be easy, but as a parent, your first priority has to be your son, which you're doing really well at in this situation so far. Good luck.
When my friend was 16, she once called her dad from a party, begging for a ride home. He picked her up, tucked her into bed with a bucket and a bunch of water, and didn't say a word about her behavior. Then, he got up at 6 a.m. and made the biggest, smelliest, loudest breakfast he could. He went about his day completely ignoring her raging hangover, being excruciatingly chipper, just letting her experience the full repercussions of her actions. The woman is almost 40 now, and still rarely drinks.
I'm sorry that happened to you. I have always made sure my son knows he can trust me, and I've been reassuring him of that since this happened.
Wow, never heard of that case. Sadder to know her friend's parents wouldn't let her sleep over either. Jesus.
This carrot. I just wrote the same thing before reading responses. This is exactly it. How Carla is roaming free and Paul moved out of max security is unfathomable. Canada's justice system failed us all.
Thank you. I don't have a good relationship with my parents, so I have always wanted to have a good relationship with my son and for him to trust me. I'm going to try again to get my wife to see how dangerous what she did was.
Just replying directly to you because this is illegal in most states and you could lose your kids.
This up arrow. Mahaffey popped into my head right away. And just because he is a boy doesn't make a difference. Dahmer targeted men and boys, Gacy targeted boys. Being a male youth has no bearing on anything. Being young and tipsy, he was vulnerable.
Exactly. A minor child is an adult's responsibility. The mother endangered the son. Unfortunately, the teenage son seems to have more sense prevailing than the mother. NTA, Op.
Hi fellow Canadians. Agreed, Op is NTA. I don't think it's a very fair punishment. It would be more of a natural consequence that he has to get up and do his chores or go to school or whatever while hungover. But it's also a potentially dangerous one.
The best way I heard it put is, if your kid messes up and is in trouble, do you want him to go, shit, this is bad, I better call my parents for help, or B, shit, my parents will me.
Carla Homolka volunteers with children now. Every time I remember that I am terrified.
For what it's worth, Debbie was my law speaker in OAC law. My teacher connected me with her. She said aside from having her daughter murdered, the second worst thing was that the media said she locked her out. She locked the door because she was late. She was able to knock on it and go inside. They did it. So they knew what time she was getting home at. It's been over 20 years since I met her and it still sticks with me how vilified she was while her daughter was missing.
Humans aren't the only danger. There are cases of kids being locked out and dying because of the weather.
Also, it's just a little. I'm presuming this is in America, and correct me if I'm wrong. But this puritanical belief of absolute abstinence before 21 and drinking alcohol in any way is terrible and must be punished as absolutely ridiculous. Introduce alcohol to teenagers responsibly and they are less likely to abuse it, and for God's sake always let them know they can come home. For reference, in the UK you can drink low alcohol beers and similar in a restaurant if eating and with an adult from 15. I'm sure there are similar rules across Europe. For me, knowing I was allowed a beer with my parents, and would have one at home too occasionally, meant I didn't go too mad when drinking at parties without adults.